About 40 Agecroft men joined the pickets lines this morning. Many of them are men who came to Agecroft after their own pits had shut. They're frightened that if this pit closed, no one blacked would get another job. They made powerful appeals to friends, and some turned back. But the majority of Agecroft men went to work. And when later they heard news of the injunction, there was no doubt about their jubilation. The Agecroft Committee have based their case strictly on the rule book, and in particular on the rule which states an area executive committee has no power to call a strike of miners within its area. Any strike can only take place after the area executive committee has authorised a ballot of the men affected, and that ballot has produced a majority in favour of strike. The affidavit goes on to say a ballot was held in Lancashire and 59% voted against strike action. That means, they argue, that Agecroft men haven't broken the rules and therefore can't be disciplined. But can't they be accused of splitting the union wide open?
I'm not splitting it open. The NEC and St Vincent have split this union open in Lancashire. I'm trying to hold this union together and fight for the rights that our forefathers fought for.
What sort of effect do you think this will have on the strike as a whole, nationally?
I've just no idea. This is an individual thing that we've done at Agecroft. We've been forced into it, unfortunately. I don't like doing it, but we're sticking up for democracy, and by Christ we'll fight for it.
Do you think it might encourage other men who perhaps would like to go back to work to do so elsewhere in the country?
I hope it does, but I'm not particularly bothered about the country. I'm bothered about Lancashire and the split that's been created in Lancashire. And I hope the lads that they back Agecroft up. We are not cowards and we're not scabs. We're fighting for the rule book and democracy, and we'll continue to fight. They'll have to carry us out of here to get us out.
Although Jimmy Lord recognises this is only a first step, there's no mistaking the delight of his men.
Democracy's all right. According to them, democracy's all right as long as you do what they want you to do. You know, that was their views, what they were trying to put across. You can have your views, you can have your feelings, you can have your vote, but if you do it wrong, you're out of union.
Well, we've proved us we're right, haven't we? And we've stuck out at Agecroft. And we've sent more coal today than we've ever done.
You've broken record?
Yeah. So Sid Vincent can put that in his pipe and smoke it.
Well, with me is the director of the Coal Board's Western area, which of course includes Lancashire, Mr. John Northard. Mr. Northard, we seem to be in an intolerable situation now as far as the mining industry is concerned. Is it not time really for the Coal Board to begin to think of some form of compromise?
Well, we're in great difficulty. I think it's well known that the board have been following a policy now for many years to try and get the industry into an economic state so that we can take advantage of those markets that are available to us, providing our costs of production and therefore our selling price is right. We're very anxious to do that. We've made good progress, and this year was going to put the job right. And it seems a tragedy to me that this can't be appreciated, so that from that base we can move forward into a much stronger and better situation for our industry.
But the crucial thing is, isn't it, that there seems to be now a complete lack of confidence by your employees in you as an employer. I refer to you as the Coal Board, of course. Surely the Coal Board has a responsibility to try and rebuild that confidence. I mean, the men are saying no pit is safe, not even in Lancashire.
Well, I don't accept that the men have no confidence in the management. I think that the fact that a lot of our men are working, and indeed the number of men in Western area working, is growing every day. That in itself shows that the average miner has confidence in the management, and they respect the information that's being given to them. As far as no pit is safe, I won't accept that either. Clearly, when we entered this dispute, it was indicated that there had to be a reduction of capacity in the industry during the financial year 1984-5 of 4 million tonnes. That was no more than that had occurred last year. And we are convinced, and I think that most thinking people would accept, that having got the industry into equilibrium with the investment that we've put into the industry, and Lancashire's no exception, we've put tremendous amount of investment into the Lancashire collieries over the last few years, that our collieries would then be in a position to take advantage of the growing markets.
But could you honestly assure the men of the Lancashire coalfield that their jobs are secure?
Their jobs are secure, provided that the costs of production are such that we can sell the coal. We have gained tremendous market advantage over the past 2 years. We have growth at our doorstep, as you might say. We have inquiries for a further 800,000 tonnes of sales in the northwest. All we've got to do is produce coal at a good enough level of productivity that our costs will meet that opportunity. If we can't do that, there's plenty of coal in the world that will come in and displace our markets, and that would be the tragedy for the industry if we lost our own markets.
Mr. Northard, thank you.
Manchester is to keep its Lord Mayor, but only just. The City Council has voted by a majority of 2 to retain the office. Left-wingers on the Labour-controlled council had wanted to follow Liverpool's example by scrapping the position. They denounced it as an example of outdated pomp, as Martin Henfield now reports.
The retiring Lord Mayor, Dr. Michael Taylor, put the issue to the vote. It was a straight fight between Conservatives wanting to retain the traditional Lord Mayor and the Labour left, who'd put up a non-sexist chairperson. The voting lights showed the result was close, a majority of just 1 in favour of retaining the office of First Citizen. Councillor Harold Tucker, who now takes over, was obviously pleased and was cheered by Conservatives and the Labour moderates who'd rebelled against their own party. One of them, Councillor Bill Edgerton, summed up their feelings.
We feel that it is a tradition of Manchester and that we need to retain that tradition for the sake of the whole community, whether it be the voluntary sector, trade and industry or whatever. And we feel that as First Citizen, we need a person of the calibre of a Lord Mayor to do that particular job.
Afterwards, the new Lord Mayor signed the oath of office and thanked the rebels who prevented a 150-year-old tradition being cast aside.
Labour had been so confident of abolishing the office of Lord Mayor that their choice, Councillor Ken Strath, had already circulated his address from what he called the chair of the council. But his criticism of excessive spending on pomp and ceremony was forgotten as Tories, Liberals and the Labour rebels celebrated their victory. But will defeat on this issue mean the left's plan to defy the government are thwarted? Those plans include retaining all the council's 37,000 employees, freezing council house rents and fairer opportunities for women. Already the left have voted themselves the chairmanships of all the council's key committees, but this afternoon they failed to flood the crucial policy committee with their nominees, and 13 left-wingers were voted off in favour of Labour moderates, Conservatives and Liberals. Later, a debate on the membership of the airport committee became so heated that the new Lord Mayor adjourned the proceedings for a 5-minute cooling-off period. So, if the Labour rebels continue to vote against their party, the socialist dream for the city would appear to have been dispelled in hours of intense procedural argument.
Martin Henfield. More of Wednesday's regional news now, and a man who killed his 2 baby sons last year has been ordered to be released from Rainhill Psychiatric Hospital on Merseyside. A doctor told Chester Crown Court nothing further could be done medically for Peter Harvey, who will be given a council flat and kept under supervision. A boy whose body was found in a churchyard at Wilmslow in Cheshire has been identified. Police say they're not treating the death of 16-year-old Lee Redshaw from Wilmslow as suspicious. A post-mortem has been held and an inquest will open shortly. Gas rigs in Morecambe Bay have been disrupted in a strike by scaffolders and labourers. The men are protesting at the dismissal of a shop steward. Pickets at St Catherine's Hospital in Birkenhead prevented a visit by a team of health consultants today. 100 workers are on strike. The unions say the consultants' visit could have led to privatisation. Nalgo workers picketed gas board offices at Bootle on Merseyside in a row over staffing levels. They were supporting 44 suspended administrative workers. 1,000 boilermakers at the Camel Laird shipyard in Birkenhead are holding a mass meeting tomorrow morning to discuss the latest redundancies. 1,200 jobs are at risk. School exams at Trafford in Greater Manchester face disruption from tomorrow because of action by members of the NAS-UWT. Members say they won't supervise exams during lunchtime or outside normal school hours. The dispute is over payment to teachers covering for absent colleagues. A jury has been told how a man was arrested after his registry office wedding ceremony. Police moved in a month after Simon Farrelly of Rawtenstall in Lancashire leapt from the dock in a magistrate's court when his bail was refused. Burnley Crown Court heard that when Farrelly was arrested, his brother tried to intervene and was also arrested. His mother had a fit and collapsed, and Farrelly himself slashed his wrists. He was sentenced to over 2 years youth custody. A lorry overturned and caught fire after colliding with safety rails on the Barton High-Level Bridge on the M63 motorway. The northbound carriageway was blocked for 3 hours and traffic tailed back for 7 miles. A large town in Cheshire is to become the first in the country to run free buses, but county councillors have still to decide which town to choose. The computerised toll booth system on the 2 Mersey road tunnels may be scrapped because it can't cope with the volume of traffic. Merseyside County Council wants to bring back manual collectors. Cricket and the enforced retirement of the former Lancashire captain Frank Hayes has been greeted with dismay by county officials. Hayes, who's 37, was advised to give up the game following a series of injuries, but he'll stay at Old Trafford till the end of the season. Soccer, and Manchester United's former Scottish international striker Lou Macari has been interviewed this afternoon for a management job at Derby County. He wants to team up with the former England winger Steve Coppell. The result of the interview will be known later this week.
And away from management, we've heard volumes recently about the behaviour of English soccer fans abroad. Violence like that which involved Tottenham Hotspur supporters in Belgium 2 weeks ago has prompted some people to suggest banning English fans from even leaving the country. But Merseyside supporters have a better reputation than most. Last weekend, Everton were highly praised for their behaviour during the FA Cup final. And to promote that image, a delegation from Liverpool has accepted an invitation from the Mayor of Rome to visit his city in advance of next week's European Cup final between Liverpool and Roma. The Italian soccer authorities hope the visit will help to avert any trouble between rival fans. The party of 15 flies out to Rome on Friday and will take part in a series of meetings with Italian officials. This report from Paul Newman.
Coming up later in the programme,
one of the leaders of the delegation is radio personality Alan Jackson. He'll be joining Liverpool Supporters Club members, local council personnel and the city's community liaison officer. Alan's been a Liverpool supporter for more than 20 years. He believes the delegation will act not only as football ambassadors, but also promote cultural and industrial links between the two cities. But isn't the main aim to improve the tarnished image of British fans?
Liverpool have, in character, humour, they've got style, and they've also got a desire to be friendly. It comes natural. And so I'm hoping that this particular party that is ahead of the main bunch of supporters will in fact put that image over to the Rome authorities and the people of Rome. It's not just a case of whining and dining. In fact, far from it. I'm hoping, along with several members of the party, to go into the streets. I think the PR starts as soon as we get on the Italian plane at Heathrow.
Are you particularly concerned about the reputation of the Italian fans and indeed the attitude of the police over there?
No, because I feel sure that the Liverpool supporters, experienced as they are in travelling, will in fact be mindful of the fact that they are in a capital city of the team that they're playing. We're well-travelled as supporters of Liverpool Football Club abroad, and because of this, I feel that the people of Rome will see that Liverpool spectators and Liverpool supporters are the most friendliest of all.
What makes you believe you can get potential troublemakers to take notice of your efforts?
I think it's all about getting the message over to the people of Rome. I do know that their television and their radio and their newspapers are as equally as concerned as yourself in terms of the match being a sporting one, a friendly one. And if the behaviour of the Liverpool supporters is anything to go by, from many, many occasions, whether it be at Wembley, whether it be in Germany, whether it be France, where European Cup finals have been played, I can see nothing but good links coming from this particular trip.
Liverpool's soccer ambassadors hoping to make next week's final a peaceful one. It was marvellous in '77. But it isn't only the top-name clubs that are thriving on Merseyside at the moment. There are now football leagues for the unemployed there. And as Colin Philpott reports, the standard may be a long way from that of the professionals, but the enthusiasm runs just as high.
Two of the things for which Liverpool is perhaps now best known, football and unemployment, have formed a successful partnership. Each week, about 90 seven-a-side teams compete in 3 separate leagues, one in Toxteth, another in Everton, and this one at the Picton Sports Centre. The leagues were the idea of the North West Sports Council and Liverpool Corporation. They're run by Dick Johnson, a former player with Tranmere Rovers, and Jim Smith, who used to be a Football League referee. This is no casual knockabout. It's all properly organized, fixtures and league tables published each week. Despite some found no problems in keeping the interest of the teams. So
I think obviously in a city like this where football is so popular, I mean, and unemployment is the unemployment rate is so high, I think there was an obvious need for something like this, and the lads have responded tremendously to it. Close.
Even the referees are on the dole, but the competition is affiliated to the Liverpool County FA and played under full Football Association rules. Like the professional game, there are serious penalties for fielding ineligible players. So anyone who's working is strictly out, and players are sometimes asked to produce their UB40 unemployment forms to prove they're jobless. The teams are from youth clubs, pubs, and some just groups of friends. The present league competition is drawing to a close, but a new one will start up in the summer. It seems there's no close season in football for the unemployed.
You've got nothing else to do, you're on the dole. It's either hang down the streets or play football here.
What would you be doing if this wasn't going on?
Digging me mum's garden.
So you'll be playing in the next competition, will you? I mean, the interest is
well, I hope not. I hope to be working. If I've got a job, I won't. But I mean, if I haven't got a job, then yeah, I hope to be playing in the next competition.
Do you think this is the right thing to do with unemployed people? I mean, some people say they should be spending all their time looking for a job.
Well, but this is by no means meant to be a substitute for work. I mean, but obviously, you know, with the unemployment situation as it is, you know, lads just can't get work. And what we're trying to do is really just occupy them, you know, throughout boring midweek afternoons.
There are similar competitions in several other cities, though on a smaller scale. One idea is to stage a sort of inter-cities cup between unemployed leagues. And in Liverpool itself, 2 more leagues are planned for the near future.
It will become a great spectator sport. Now then, nothing to do with the last item, but on your last holiday, you may well have been shown the sights by a tour guide, possibly a smart young gent or a gal in a crisp uniform. But in Chester this summer, tourists will be escorted round the historic city by a very different type of guide, clad in full Roman battle dress. Colin Philpott explains.
They came, they saw, and in one case at least, they were to conquer. 3 would-be Roman legionnaires were put through their theatrical paces in the city's ancient amphitheatre. The costume wasn't quite complete, but that didn't matter to the judges. They were listening for a strong voice and looking for a good pair of knees.
It has therefore fallen upon me to take you out on patrol.
These Roman-style tourist guides are the idea of the people selling Chester as a tourist attraction and part of their new aggressive approach.
Most of my colleagues are away in the far north, fighting with their comrades from the other 2 British legions against the barbaric Caledonians.
Well, we're looking for 3 things, basically. One, good knees, because obviously the Romans wore short tunics. We're also looking for his bearing, military presence, and obviously voice projection. And the noise from the road behind, in fact, proved a good test for the voices.
Other men in the ranks come from all over Europe, North America, and the Middle East.
The candidates performed, the judges deliberated, and the verdicts were given in true gladiatorial style.
We are here today for the appointment of Roman legionnaire to the fortress of Diva. Recruit, Mark Brady, step forward for the imperial verdict. Recruit, Derek Hickson. Recruit, Michael Blake, step forward for the imperial verdict.
As the winner donned the full regalia of his new rank, the vanquished were consoled, but they'll be called up if the victor is taken sick or attacked by marauders.
Well, I just saw it in the job centre and I just thought, well, that's for me. It's the kind of job I'd like to do, showing off a bit. And so I just applied for it.
Do you know enough about Chester to take people around on guided tours?
Well, not as yet, but everything that I need to know I will learn beforehand, and I shall have a script which I have to read out to them.
Aren't you going to feel a bit of an idiot walking around dressed up like this?
No, not really. Why should I?
So, on June the 7th, 23-year-old salesman Michael Blake will begin his military service, showing tourists around the city walls. He'll be on parade every Thursday, Friday and Saturday, preserving a link with an empire on which perhaps the sun hasn't yet set.
So from Diva to the cricket. 2 matches, both in the Britannic Championship. At Nuneaton, Lancashire are 284 for 5 over 101 overs against Warwickshire. Lancashire captain John Abrams, 155 not out, foiling a gamble by Bob Willis, who put Lancashire in first. At Chesterfield, Derbyshire let Surrey off the hook. They were 30 for 3, but then Surrey claimed maximum batting points, 306 all out. Jeff Miller took 5 for 117. In reply, Derbyshire 21 without loss from 7 overs. To the weather. Tonight, dry and clear. The evening and overnight will stay clear and dry. 1 or 2 mist patches will occur around dawn, the winds light. Tomorrow, sunny periods but cooler. Tomorrow, dry with sunny periods, although cloud will increase later in the afternoon. It'll be a little cooler than today, with temperatures hovering around 17 centigrade, 63 Fahrenheit, the winds blowing north to northeast. And that's Wednesday's look northwest.
Welcome back. The first attempt in 11 weeks to settle the coal dispute collapsed in ruins this afternoon after just 1 hour. Nobody expected that today's meeting would bring a dramatic end to the strike, but there were hopes that the Coal Board and the NUM would at least agree to hold further talks about the future of the industry. But Arthur Scargill insisted on the withdrawal of the pit closure programme. Ian McGregor said no, and the talks broke down. Trevor Bell, a moderate member of the miners' executive, was at the short and, by all accounts, bitter meeting this afternoon. Mr. Bell, can I ask you first, Mr. Scargill said after the meeting that even the most moderate members of the executive were appalled by Mr. McGregor's attitude. Is that right? Were you appalled?
Well, yes, I was. I was very surprised because we'd had a discussion, well, not a discussion, we'd had a report from the board about the situation in the industry with regard to production levels and the relationship to what was happening with regard to the plan for coal that was established in '74. We'd had a financial report from the board, and then at the end of it all, the president said, well, you know that there is a serious situation in the industry, the most critical situation we've had for years. Are you prepared to abandon the programme you put to us on the 6th of March, about 20 pits closing, 20,000 jobs, in order for discussions to take place? And he simply said, no comment. And I couldn't believe it. I've been attending meetings with the board for many, many years, and I've never known a reaction from a chairman of the board that was as if we were all attending a press conference, and he was saying no comment. And here we are in a critical situation as we are.
And that was it, was it?
Well, that was it. The Deputy Chairman, Mr. Cowan, and the Director General for Industrial Relations tried to salvage something from it by suggesting that we would have to deal with the situation as it is, and Cowan said, can I have private talks with you without any commitment? But of course, during this time, McGregor didn't speak, and his line seemed to be complete intransigence with no flexibility whatsoever.
Can I ask you this? How much do you feel that a resolution is being hampered by the personalities of the two men at the top? They're both very strong-minded men. They both, not to put too fine a point on it, loathe each other. Mightn't it be helped if we had negotiation at perhaps a lesser level and we avoided the personalities of these two men?
Well, these are the two leaders in the industry. One has been elected by his members and the other one has been appointed by a government, and quite clearly the size of the transfer fee and the factor of him being appointed by the Prime Minister...
They're incapable of talking to each other, though,
well,
aren't they?
there wouldn't be if somebody would at least say to the National Coal Board, the country can't afford what's going on at the present time. Now, clear the paper and sit down and talk about the plan for coal and where your plan fits in with it, and see if you can convince the union.
Do you think Mr. Scargill was perhaps trying to provoke Mr. McGregor so that he would in fact walk out?
No, we had a discussion before that meeting took place. And we were agreed as an executive that we would listen to what the Coal Board had to say, and then we would say, now, will you wipe the slate clean and let us have talks about the future of this industry? If the board at a later stage had wanted to introduce the subject again, that would have been down to them. We would probably have adopted the same attitude that we have now. But while ever the chairman of the board insists that that's his bottom line, how can there be any flexibility anyway?
Oh, Mr. Bell, thank you very much. Goodness knows where we go from now.
Well, it's going to be a long haul, I think.
Thank you. Nick.
Well, let's get away from it all. To Ireland now. To an obscure and not particularly significant little village called Ballyporeen. At least, it used to be obscure and rather insignificant, but if you haven't heard of it already, well, you'll know every detail about it by the end of June. For this, of course, is the home of President Reagan's ancestors, and since it's election year, Ronald Reagan thought he'd pay them a little visit. Bernard Falk has beaten him to it.
It would be easy to describe Ballyporeen as a one-horse town. Too easy. So instead meet haulage contractor Jimmy Whelan and Billy the Only Horse, and reflect that for just 2 hours in its entire history, this sleepy Tipperary village will be the headquarters of the Western world. Someone is anxious to prove he's a broth of an Irish boy, and as that someone is the President of the United States, you can be sure in this particular parlour there'll be a welcome on the mat. His name is Ragnar O'Regan in Gaelic, or you may know him as someone else.
My name is Ronald Reagan, that's Reagan with a name. I'm the one and only president of the good old USA. I'm a Yankee Doodle dandy in most everything I do, but I've also got a little bit of Irish in me too.
In the biggest burst of communal energy since the 1920s, when the Black and Tans burnt down one of its pubs, Ballyporeen is getting ready to greet the president. If it's standing still, then paint it. If it moves, then give it a drink.
Come on, baby, come on. Come on. Right up there, come on.
His usual paint, I suppose.
His usual drink.
Ah, well.
Cynics have cruelly sneered that in an election year, Ragnar O'Regan is courting the Irish vote. In Ballyporeen, they're delighted that having ignored them for 73 years, Ragnar has decided to pay his Irish kin a visit.
I'll keep him happy.
The precise details of the presidential itinerary are still a State Department secret, but we've managed to learn some of the exciting plans which lie ahead. The presidential helicopter will be setting down at 8:05 on June the 3rd in a football pitch near the church. There'll then be something called a cultural performance in the High Street, which presumably is an exhibition of Irish singing and dancing. Lunch will be taken in an Irish pub. The whole village is littered with pubs, but for Ronald Reagan, this pub's very special. There is little doubt that Ragnar O'Regan is Irish. It says so on a plaque outside an ancient graveyard where his clan are thought to be buried. It's assumed that his great-great-grandfather lies here, only no one can find the grave. It's thought his great-grandfather Michael escaped famine in Ireland for the London borough of Peckham in 1854, and then went to Illinois, which is why Ragnar is in the White House instead of Ballyporeen. At the parish church, where even the Lord gets a touch-up before Ragnar passes by, there's more solid proof of the president's Irish links. The record seems to prove that his great-grandfather was baptized here in 1829, and even if the name seems a bit obscure, even slightly altered, the priest at least is convinced that Ragnar's roots are here.
There are those, Father, who have said that it's not Reagan, but it's Ryan. That name looks suspiciously like Ryan, and if so, that the whole thing could be based on a total misconception.
That's fair enough. I suppose the only answer I can make to that, and I hope it doesn't sound patronizing, is those who would know how to read the book and read this type of book would not make that remark.
How do you mean? In what way?
There's a clear distinction in the way the name is written to me, as opposed to the way Ryan is written.
Alas, there is no trace of the ancestral homestead of Ronald O'Regan. He comes from a long line of peasants. They lived in huts made from mud and thorn bushes, and when the family emigrated to America, the rain simply washed the homes back into the soil. There's no trace either of the little village where they lived. That's now been returned to farmland. So you'd think that the soil, while rich in social history, would have very little value at all. You'd be wrong. All you have to do is to pick up the clay, put it into little cellophane packets with a label, Ancestral Home of President Ronald Reagan, and you can flog it to tourists for 50p a throw. Of course they're cashing in, or at least the traders are. And if history had dealt you the past poverty of Ballyporeen and Father Ragnarlo Christmas was about to arrive, then who can blame them for it? Business is brisk, is it?
Yeah, business is quite good at the moment in Ballyporeen.
Yeah, what you've got there? Oh, that's a...
Oh, this is a plaque just commemorating the visit of President Reagan to Ballyporeen.
It's very nice.
Very nice indeed.
Yeah.
And this is a record.
Yeah. Drop off in
Ballyporeen.
How does it go?
Well, I can't sing really.
Go on, just give me one line. I'll sing it with you.
Excuse me, Mr. President, and let me lead the way to the homeland you've been longing for this long and weary day.
That was very good, very good. There was a time when Ballyporeen had one phone box, like a week ago. Now it's been lined up with communication satellites. They've erected 3 huge tents in a field, equipped with hundreds of telephone lines for an expected 1,000 journalists who will report to the far corners of the planet Earth that Ragnarlo Reagan has met Father Murphy, eaten a pub lunch, and visited a graveyard where his ancestors may or may not be buried. Who cares where he comes from, as long as he comes from Ireland? And if you're seeking a genetic link between Ragnall and the past, then take a look at another O'Regan who's Irish through and through. Had Miles O'Regan been born in America, he'd be earning a fortune as a Ragnall O'Regan lookalike, and it's never whispered that his jet black hair might just have come from a bottle. Have you tried to actually look like him? Have you done
Not
it?
a bit.
You haven't?
And I often talk to boys and they come like, will you go away and find somebody else? The country's full of Reagans, get some other fella besides me.
Yeah.
Oh, we have him. They kicked out me as if I was a leprechaun. Wouldn't let me go. Really, I'm telling you.
Miles, who's 60, farms 140 acres of prime land near Ballyporeen, just across the border in County Cork, and claims that he's a 5th cousin of Ragnall, maybe once or twice removed. But both are descended from the ancient clan Reagans, whom another cousin, Paddy, has traced back through the mists of time.
We can trace them back as far as you can trace human history.
Really?
Well, almost.
Like how far back?
Not to the Greeks.
No.
No, I'd be beaten there, but to the Romans, yes.
There were Reagans who were Romans?
There were Reagans, officers in Caesar's army.
But Julius Caesar was a Roman. I mean, he wasn't a Reagan, was he? I mean, he
No,
was a Roman.
No, I don't think so, but one of his favourite officers, a centurion in his army, was Reagan.
Really?
Yes, and he was a very brave fellow. I believe that he turned a couple of the battles that made Julius Caesar the man he was. One of those was at Reagan in Italy, after whom they then decided to call that area, whatever area it was, they called it after this fellow Reagan, so it became Regano.
So Ragnall might be Roman, which would help to pull the Italian vote as well, none of which bothers Ragnall's Irish clan. They're longing for an invite to meet him, which so far they haven't had.
Now mighty soon I'll get on board my presidential jet, and I'll fly back home to see those dear old folks I can't forget. And when I land, they'll shake my hand and say, how do you do? And then they'll make me president of Tipperary too. It's a long, long way to Tipperary from that big White House in Washington, D.C. And I wish that I was back in my